Let's talk about Chet Holmgren. As an OKC fan, Chet Holmgren, I was so excited to watch him. He was a player coming out of Gonzaga that he was my number one player. If I almost said the Ravens, if the Thunder had the number one overall pick, I wanted them to take Chet Holmgren. If they had the number 2 overall pick, I was hoping Chet falls to 2. If they had the number 3, I was hoping he falls for 3. And I wasn't even thinking OKC would get a top 3 pick. I was like, okay, they may be picking 4. Maybe a team takes Jaden Ivey. Luckily, the Thunder still ended up getting Chet Holmgren. And I am still so excited for him to play. But I think it was laughable at social media and the national media, in the last day or so since we found out the news. Because there's been so many lies just going throughout Twitter, from a lot of verified accounts. I don't buy into the trolls and stuff like that. I have no problems with that whatsoever. Whatever. If you want to troll, you can troll, but that's not going to get to me. But I see all these verified accounts and they're like, this is the reason why a lot of GMs were just too hesitant on drafting Chet Holmgren was this body frame. And it was like, what are you talking about? Why is Victor Wembanyama this generational LeBron type prospect? And I love Victor Wembanyama, freak prospect. I have no problems with him. But there's no concern about him getting injured. And people are just like, oh, no, he just won't get injured. And he has an injury history. I believe he's actually injured right now is Victor Wembanyama, whereas Chet Holmgren hadn't been injured once. It's like, yeah, he has a smaller frame, but he hasn't been injured. And they're like, oh, yeah, but the major injury history is going to, get broken in half. And he ends up getting injured. And everyone just starts laughing. And they're like, oh, we all told you he's not big enough. He's not strong enough to play in the NBA. And it's like, okay, if Chet Holmgren had tried to take a charge from LeBron James and gets a bruised rib or something like that, where you're watching it and you're like, oh man, LeBron just leveled this dude, like taking a truck from Derrick Henry, right? That's not what happened. Like, they both were running together. They both jumped up simultaneously. There wasn't a lot of contact from LeBron or Chet to each other. They just landed next to each other, and LeBron landed on top of his foot. There was nothing whatsoever that Chet Holmgren can do, and it had nothing to do with his body size, with his height, with his skinniness. That there was no problem with that. It was a Lisfranc injury. That, I had an injury in my foot in a similar situation. Now, was I going against LeBron James? No. But I was going up against a guy that was bigger than me, and I got injured in playing defense on a fast break where he didn't bump me, but we both jumped up. I tried to block his shot. I don't think he made it, just like Chet did. But we both landed, and he landed just slightly on my foot, and I got injured, and I had to miss basically the entire basketball season because of that. Now, am I Chet Holmgren? No, I'm not Chet Holmgren. But I'm just saying these types of accidents can happen, and it has nothing to do, like I said, if Chet had gotten bodied and run over by LeBron James, and it was like, oh my gosh, he's not big enough or strong enough to play. It was like, no, he held his own. He jumped up. He forced a bad shot, and they landed on each other wrong. The benefit is it's a Lisfranc injury. This is not an injury where people are going to be questioning, is he going to be the same type of player after the injury? That is not what happens with a Lisfranc injury. Lisfranc injuries, you come back and you are 100% once you get the foot reaccustomed. It's not like he, tore his Achilles or something like that, where sometimes that happens. People are like, oh, this guy could be done. No, he had a Lisfranc injury and he's going to miss his rookie season. And I try and be an optimist when it comes to basketball, but I was, I tweeted this out from my personal account. I was really looking forward to watching Chet. And I was no longer on Team Tank after we got Chet. I was like all in on trying to, be a play-in tournament team and stuff like that. I really wanted to watch them try and win, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So OKC is going to be sitting in probably another tank race. And we're going to figure out exactly what kind of team that this is, because I think a lot of people look at this OKC roster and they think this team's terrible. And I would disagree with that, because the team that people are looking at, the record that they've been seeing over the last couple of years is so inaccurate, because both of the last 2 years, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has gotten hurt And they've just decided, like, you know what? He's done because they were trying to tank. He probably could have come back. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, when he's been playing, they win games purely because of him, because he will go toe to toe with any scorer in the NBA. He can absolutely be a player that averages 30 points per game in the NBA. And Josh Giddey last year played really well. He can be a really solid number 2. Am I saying they're a contender? Absolutely not. Am I saying I think they're going to be in the play-in? I don't think so. But to sit around and act like this is a team that is the worst, because I see like tankathon rankings and stuff like that, and it's like OKC's the worst team in the NBA. And I'm like, how is this team worse than the Spurs? Because if you look at the roster, I have it up right now. You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander starting at point guard. Potential all-star caliber, if he plays the full season, which, I love watching him, and I think he will be an all-star at some point in his career. You got Josh Giddey and Lou Dort. One's playing the 2, one's playing the 3. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of a positionless basketball. Lou Dort is very solid. Great 3, not just a 3-and-D. He's a scorer, and he's a great defender. And that's something that's very necessary in the NBA. Then you have Josh Giddey, who is just a very well-balanced all-around basketball player. That right there, those 3 players are enough to win you plenty of games in the NBA. That is enough to win you 20 to 25 games right there. And OKC's over-under right now is at like 17.5 after the Chet Holmgren injury. And I understand that the front court is not very good. Right now it's, kind of 5 players vying for the spot. You could throw in Jay Will, as kind of the 6th player if you want. But, you got Darius Bazley, you got Derek Favors, you got JRE, you got Mike Muscala, and you got Poku. My expectation is Darius Bazley is going to start. I would think JRE also gets the start at center, even though I don't like him playing center. I much prefer him at the power forward spot. But that's kind of my expectation with this roster. Then off the bench, I think it's a very solid bench. Like, if you look at the starters are not elite whatsoever, if you compare it to the rest of the NBA, but I think the bench is very solid. You've got Trey Mann, who, last year as a rookie definitely played well, but you saw the flashes of, hey, this guy can be a lightning in a bottle type 6th man, a Lou Williams type of scorer off the bench. Then you have Aaron Wiggins, who also showed flashes of, hey, this guy's athletic. He can shoot the 3 ball when he's hot. And, overall, he's a good player. But the player I'm most excited for is the player that the Thunder drafted in Jalen Williams, J-Dub, because he came into Summer League and he's got great size. He's got great length, and he showed he can score the basketball. And I think him as a 6th man, or, 7th man, if you want to say, and just a rotational piece, is going to be very interesting to watch, because him and Trey Mann together is actually going to be very, very unique as a backcourt, because both of them can really score from any level. J-Dub is significantly more physical, but they both are like difficult to defend in their own way. Trey Mann, super, super quick, super agile, great handle. And then J-Dub is just like, hey, I got a wingspan and I'm going to shoot over you, and I can drive by you, and I can dunk the ball, and I can play physical. There's a lot of things that, I am excited to watch with that bench. And I haven't talked about, the other guys like JRE and Poku and Muscala and Favors. Like, Favors, I think, is decent, as a backup center. Whatever. I have no problems with that. Mike Muscala is like a bullseye from 3-point range for some reason in OKC. I know he was always decent, back when he was playing with Atlanta and such, but this dude is like a 40% shooter from 3 with OKC. Like, he's filthy. He may be the best 3-point shooter on the team, maybe outside of Ty Jerome. But Poku is the biggest question. Chet getting injured allows for Poku to play a little bit more, and Chet getting injured is a negative thing. But this is the year, I think, where we get to really find out, like, okay, is Poku going to potentially be the player that a lot of us are hoping that he can potentially be? And he doesn't have to average 20. He doesn't have to average 15. But he needs to show a little bit more control than he showed in his first couple of seasons in the NBA. And he also needs to show a little bit more consistency, because so far he's been going out there and he has just been throwing up. Right, like sometimes he gets hot and it's like, oh, look at that Poku, and his shooting form looks really good. He's got a really nice stroke, but he looks wild when he plays. This is the year where it's like, okay, you've been in the league for a little bit. let's see what you can really do. Can you start to get a little bit more efficient? And can you start playing, some smart basketball? And he's now in a situation where the Thunder are no longer trying to, contend for a play-in spot. Now they're like, okay, we are going to try and get the best out of what we can. Figure out what young pieces, what young assets we need, and we can trade away the rest. Right? I love Teo Maledon. I ran the Teo burner account. Do we need him? Do we need Ty Jerome? Do we need Lindy Waters? You know, maybe we get to see a little bit of Usman, who we may not have been able to see whatsoever this year if we were trying to contend. But now it's like, hey, let's throw Usman in there. Usman, I still want to say it's Jang, but Usman is someone that, he's definitely probably more of a project, but the potential is there. 6'11" frame, can pass, he can shoot. He's got great form when he shoots. He's relatively inconsistent when he does it. I've seen people say he's got the prettiest shot that never goes in. But all these players, like, we may actually get to see them play a little bit more, which, can be frustrating every once in a while. But at the same time, hey, if you're OKC, you're going to be trying to play, and you're probably going to get another top 10 pick this year. And there are plenty of players. I know the Victor sweepstakes, I don't think OKC is going to win that. But someone that I think, OKC could definitely be targeting, and I got to pull up the big board for, overall is there's just so many different guys, at the small forward spot that, are going to be in that, and obviously so many things change in college basketball, but I really like the Nick Smith Jr. if they want to go point guard, if they recognize that, hey, maybe Teo and Ty Jerome aren't really the guys. We can throw J-Dub at the backup small forward spot. Let's get a point guard next to, or shooting guard or point guard next to Trey Mann, Nick Smith Jr. if we get a pretty good pick, depending on how he plays. You got a couple of OTE guys in, I think it's Ausar Thompson and Amon Thompson that they could go after. You got Dylan Mitchell, you got a couple of Duke, you always got Duke guys. But a lot of players that they can potentially be adding that weren't in the cards. And so you have to look at everything. I believe you have to look at everything in a positive way. I also am a huge fan of Anthony Black out of Arkansas as well. If they get a little bit of a better draft pick, but you got to look at everything in a positive manner. You got to turn it around. And Sam Presti's talked to the media and he said, hey, Chet Holmgren understands what happened. There's nothing he can do. And he's in the gym and he's working and he's trying to get, he's lifting and doing all this stuff. Why? Because he knows that there's nothing that can change the Lisfranc injury. So you got to figure out what's the best plan of action from there. And he's trying to take it. So the best plan of action, I think, is play out this year and get another young asset and play him next to Chet and have their rookie years be together. And that is completely fine with me. It's a little bit frustrating because, I really wanted to see Chet. I really wanted to see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in like a, trying to compete role, but we just got to wait one more year. And I hope Shai will be patient. Like look at Devin Booker. Devin Booker, it was like, okay, he's trying. And then all of a sudden they got the right asset, whether it's a young asset or a veteran. And it was like, boom, there they go. I think that can be the same thing with SGA. If next year OKC gets a top 8 pick and they have Chet and they go, just like, because when they drafted Giddey was like the number 6 overall pick. And it was like, wow, instant impact. Imagine they do that again and then they add in a Chet Holmgren and it's like, wow, we actually have a really good young roster like the Memphis Grizzlies. And we can really play some basketball and compete.